Hi, this is Dr. Jack Lynn, and I'm going to take you on about a 32-minute mountain bike ride in the El Moro part of the Crystal Cove State Park here in Laguna Beach, California. As you'll see in the beginning of the video, I'm starting in the parking lot at the ranger station, and this is going to be a loop of about 5 miles. So I try to get up some speed here to get up this little hill, to get onto the level. And today, which is a late Saturday afternoon on December the 28th, 2013, I'm out toward the end of the day. The weather is cool, and I thought I would try to set a new time record personally for me in this 5-mile loop. When I first started the mountain bike, which was only about 6 months ago, I remember it took me several weeks, a couple months, to be able to get to the top of the El Moro Ridge. And by the time I was able to do that and make the complete circle, it was approximately an hour trip. And today I'd like to do it in 32 minutes, and I believe I was very close to that. So here we are, starting out the trail. Now this is starting a bit downhill, about a 12%, going to maybe a 15% grade here downhill, getting to the canyon floor from the parking lot at the ranger station here at El Moro. As we come down around the path, it's about 5-6 feet wide, and this is going to bend to the left. Off to the right, you'll see a couple of structures down to the right there. One being a brand new pavilion amphitheater that was sponsored and supported and actually paid for by Mike and Tricia Burns, who are two of my clients and very close friends that I ride with here about every other day. They also have the Michael and Tricia Burns Environmental Loop, which is right off here to my right. Anyway, here we are on the canyon trail. Now we're at the base of the canyon, down about 120 or 30, 40 feet from the parking lot where we started. And I'm trying to stay in a fairly high gear here. I'm using a 29er mountain bike made by Scott. It's a Spark, which is carbon fiber. It's a 2-in-10 gear ratio. So here I'm in the high front gear, and probably in about 7 or 8 in the rear gear. And you'll see I'm trying to keep my speed up here, passing a few people. But the trail bends around, goes uphill, downhill just slightly. A couple of dips here and there. But this is going out away from the ocean toward the head of this canyon. So as I progress out here, we've passed the half-mile point back some time ago, be coming up on a mile here fairly shortly. And this is beautiful country. It's a beautiful day. The sun's out. As I said, it's December the 28th, and here we are probably at this time of the evening, about 4 o'clock. It's about 64 degrees. So just ideal to do a mountain bike ride, so my body doesn't have to spend all of its energy trying to cool down as it does on some of the days when it's in the 70s, or sometimes we hit 80 here along the ocean. Not often, but occasionally. So this again is going along the canyon trail. You can see that since this is winter time, a lot of the foliage is brown and is in a dormant stage. But you can imagine in another couple of months, as our rainy season, as we call it a rainy season, will begin. This all becomes very green.
Hello. I'll be on your left.
So as I was saying, The beauty of this area in the spring, with all the mustard plants and all the foliage beginning to regenerate for the new year, is just phenomenal. But even here in the winter and fall, you can see the sun now is getting into the golden hour, and out here we have quite a bit of golden hour at the end of the day, which is just beautiful. So I'm progressing here up the canyon trail. Again, this is a fairly smooth trail, and it's in the floor of the canyon, so there's not much of an altitude change here. As I go around the trail here slightly to the left, shortly we'll go through a couple of uphill areas, and then further down, and then we'll begin the climb
Be on your left.
up from the canyon trail on a trail that's called East Cutoff. I'm sorry, a trail that's called East Cutoff, or as many people call it, I Think I Can. And that trail will take me to the top of El Moro Ridge, and that is about 1.1 miles or a little more from the canyon floor to the top of the ridge, which is then about 800 feet in elevation. The floor here is probably around 100, so there's about a 700 to 730 or 30 foot difference in elevation from the canyon floor to the top of the ridge. Now, this is one of the little elevations still on the canyon floor, but just prior to getting to the East Cutoff trail, or I Think I Can. So as I pump up this part of the trail, then this will go downhill, and at the bottom then you'll notice that it's a very sharp right, and at this point I have lowered my my gearing in the front gear to a lower gear, the low on the front and probably 4 or 5 on the back gearing, and here I'm back in the high gear on the crank in the front, and motoring down this section. Very shortly you will notice that there will be a very hard right, and that's going to be the low point in the canyon here before starting up what is about an 11.5 to a 12% grade, which will last about 1 1/10 to maybe 1 2/10 miles total. So it's a pretty good grind up the hill. There's really no level spots on it. So here I come down to this area to make the hard right off the canyon trail, and this is now on to East Cutoff, and try to pick up some speed here because this is not much of an incline here, but very soon it's going to start up the hill, and then this is a fairly long stretch. Again, today I am doing this pull up the hill in the low front gear, but the first 2/3 of the pull I'm going to do in the 6th gear on the back, and then I'll tell you a little later up the hill here I'm going to move it up to the 7th gear. So I'm really going at a fairly good pace, tracking my heart rate, which as I start up the incline here, and you'll notice on the right the canyon floor will get further and further away as I'm winding up here this trail, but my heart rate will at this point be about 110, and by the time I get up to the top it will have reached at times 166. For this 5-mile circuit today, I believe my average heart rate for 32 minutes was approximately, the average was 145. So again, I'm very close to 64, and that's maintaining a fairly high average heart rate, but again for only 32 minutes, not counting cool down or warm up or things like that. But so it gives me a very good cardio workout. This part of the trail is just gravelly, a few rocks here and there, nothing tremendously difficult to encounter and overcome. So here I go up the side. This is East Cutoff. or the I Think I Can trail. And this will bend to the left up here. You'll notice there's some telephone or electric, rather, poles, electricity poles up there. And this trail is going to bend right around to the left and stay on the right side of those. So there's a fairly good pull here going up the side of the canyon to the El Moro Ridge trail. This is going to bend around to the left. Always try to be careful here because there can be mountain bikers coming down that occasionally will take, rather than the inside of the curve, going somewhat speedily, and they come to the outside of the curve. So I try to stay on the outside as much as possible just to be careful. Now this levels a little bit. It's still uphill, as you can see. I'll pick up just a little speed, but I've tried to keep my pace in going up. There comes a biker down now. And, so sometimes they do come down fairly fast, and when they hit that curve that we just turned on, it's a little tedious to make sure that I'm on the outside and they're on the inside. Anyway, as I'm progressing up the trail, I try to establish a pace in a gear that I know I can handle, and just keep that pace all the way up the terrain. And in some places, of course, it gets steeper. In some places, it's a little bit more less steep. It's not ever level. But you'll see this is progressively going up. And the average degree of incline here, as I said, is about 11.5 to 12%. Just that's the average. Some more, some a little less. But the pace will remain pretty much the same. Now you can't see as far as I can to the left, and I'm not turning my head so the camera is moving right and left because it's fairly distracting. But this trail is again gravelly. Some rocks you'll see, there's some larger than others. There's a lot of loose rock on the top of the trail, sort of gravel or a little larger size, and the underlayment of the trail is kind of clayish, hard dirt. But again, being fall, there's not a lot of greenery here. You'll see some on my right. We've had a little bit of moisture the last couple of weeks, and so some of the areas green up slightly. The trail here is going to go over a couple of bumps for drainage that they've put in the trail to make sure that there's not too much runoff down the trail. They divert it down onto the canyon wall. Again, continuing up, beautiful day. The sun's out. Of course, all I have to do, as you'll note here, is follow my shadow. And as long as I follow my shadow, at this point, I'm going the right direction. That, of course, will not last that long as I turn back on one of the switchbacks here and start the other direction. I'll be somewhat in the shade. Again, as we progress up, this will be going all the way up to about 800, 830 or 40 feet in elevation from the floor of the canyon, which would have been around 100 or so at the low point there just before I started the trail. So what a night to be out, though. What an evening. Enjoyable, cool. Of course, at this point in time, my heart rate's into the 135, 138 neighborhood, and I am beginning to warm up. And what's interesting is I do wear a top under my t-shirt, which is a modified wetsuit top, and that wetsuit top is about 3/8 of an inch, which long sleeves, comes down over my waist, and is actually made to be a sauna suit for sweating and losing weight. But I like to use it here on the mountain bike trail because it keeps me warm. It does cause me to perspire quite a bit, but then again on the way down the trail, when I'm going fairly fast into sometimes the wind, the breeze coming off the ocean, that it keeps me warm also. So that's my attire when I do mountain biking. It seems to work for me. And so as this continues up further and further and further, the trail will bend to the right, it'll bend to the left, and eventually we'll make it all the way to the top. And this is a fairly steep incline, and then you'll notice this will bend around to the right and then back to the left. And finally, we get into some areas of some greenery here on the right where some of the grass is turning green again. But anyway, this is a fairly difficult section, so I'm still in the 6th gear on the back and the low gear on the front. And this may seem somewhat tortuous, but this is fairly good speed for me. I'm never off the seat of the bike, so I'm not doing any standing and pedaling. This area is just a little less steep, but as it bends around, then I'll come up to a fairly steep pitch here and start to pick up a little speed to make it over the pitch in my 6th gear. And so here we go, pick up a little speed, and then this is up through a gravelly section, and this gets fairly steep right here. And so we get over that hump, and then the trail again, I follow my shadow till it bends to the right. And again, you can see that this is a continuous uphill climb, going at a fairly good rate of speed. So as this bends to the right, it'll bend back to the left, and finally, after going back to the left, I'll tell you when I'm moving into 7th gear to try to gain a little bit more speed, because remember, one of my purposes on this particular outing today was to set a new time record for myself. I'm sure it's maybe not much for many people that mountain bike quite often and have done it for years, but for me, having only done it for 6 months, this really is an accomplishment if I can get my time down to about 32 minutes for 5 miles in this terrain. So here I am following my shadow. You'll see my seat is pretty fully extended. I use an adjustable self-adjustable seat, pneumatic seat, so I can adjust it from my handlebars with a small movement of a button there. And this bike is fully adjustable suspension, and that is both front and rear, which is also adjusted from the handlebars without ever getting off the bike or reaching off of the handlebars. So a very, very nice bike. I was using an old Trek bike, about a 10-year-old bike that was a 26-incher before this one. Now I've just shifted into 7th gear. This slightly is less steep here, so I'll pick up some more speed. I'm getting close to the top of the ridge now. At least my anticipation is that I can almost feel that I'm coming up toward the top of the ridge. So even though the energy is getting a little less here than I had at the bottom, my heart rate now is probably in the mid-150s. I know the end is near as far as my climb. I'll have another climb at the very end of the ride, but after this climb, then you'll see that we're going to have a wonderful, beautiful downhill ride toward the ocean, and then down over the hill, back into the canyon, back up to the parking lot. But anyway, the bike, the Scott Spark bike, is a X-large frame. I'm about almost 6'1" and weigh about 215 pounds. So this X-large frame is quite a bit different than the other smaller frame 26-inch bike that I was using, which was previously my son's bike. And this is a nicer ride, smoother ride. I, from my little experience, certainly enjoy the 29ers better than the 26-inch bikes. But having all the controls on this fully adjustable bike on the handlebars, including the seat height, really is like driving a finely tuned European sports car. Compared to the other bike I was driving, was like a stick shift, manual shift, maybe 1-ton pickup truck. It felt that rough, and sometimes in pushing it up the hill, it felt that hard to push up the hill too. So here I'm coming further up the hill. We have just slightly a little bit more time to go here on this particular trail. It's going to bend to the right slightly, then back to the left. Then I make a hard right, and I'm almost on top in another minute or so. And then the excitement starts because we pick up some speed, come down the hill back toward the ocean. So my entire trip here primarily has been away from the ocean to the top of the ridge. The sun is behind me, and if you can imagine, behind me is the wonderfully deep blue Pacific Ocean. Catalina Island is off to my left shoulder behind me. The sun will be going down over the the south end of Catalina Island. Just a beautiful, beautiful picture to envision, and it's even more beautiful if you're here in person to see it. So there are some clouds forming today, so I don't know if you'll be able to see the bright blue, but just imagine the beautiful sunsets that we have here. And if you're from this area, you know and experience what I'm talking about. So here I am, almost at the top of the climb. I've only got about another 30 or 40 feet of elevation after I make this bend to the right. I'm in 7th gear, continuing on, and now I can almost see the top of the ridge. And so I'm feeling pretty good. My heart rate's about 165. I'm really trying to motor up this area because I need to keep all the speed I possibly can to make this ride in 32 minutes, if that's possible. Don't know if it's possible, but I'm certainly going to try. I think I'm on track. I use a polar monitor for my heart rate, which is connected to my iPhone via Bluetooth. So every half mile I get a average heart rate plus a mileage report. And so here I am, almost to the ridge. As soon as I come up around this trail, another maybe 70, 60 yards to the right, I'm going to be on the ridge trail, and that will be about as high as I'm going to go today. Now I'm making a right onto the El Moro Ridge, top of the mountain. Now you'll see the sun come into play, and this levels out. It will start to be level or slightly downhill most of the way in, and you'll notice the speed's picking up. I put it in high gear on the front. I've got it now in the 8th gear on the back. Might even get it into the 9th gear on the back. I have 10, but I kind of stay around 9 at the most. And now I'm picking up speed going down the trail. This is the El Moro Ridge Trail. And the speeds here are between anywhere from about 16 miles an hour up to about 26 miles an hour. And that you'll see there are some areas here where I can go a little faster. This is still fairly level, so I'm pumping the entire way here. There's no drifting or coasting or anything like that. Again, trying to make up time. You'll notice there's little bits of gravelly stones on this road. Some areas there's a little bit of moisture. There's some grooves in the road, some cutouts, some washouts. But in general, a great ride. And now I've taken the suspension that was fully locked on the way up the hill, and I've backed it down to about a medium suspension here across the top. Once I passed, you'll see some electric line poles coming up here. Once I pass them, this trail will start to go downhill at a graded grade to get me back down to the canyon floor. And when that happens, I'm going to lower the seat down and go into fully adjustable suspension mode. And then it's a lot of fun at that point in time because we're taking some very, very, I guess, a fast ride over a few bumps. Again, I'm not very skilled in this area. I'm still learning. I only have about 6 months of experience doing this. So here we come past those electric line poles. We'll bend to the right here. You'll see the trail get dark. It's a different composition of dirt and clay. And this, as it bends to the right, I'm going to lower the seat down about right now, go into full suspension. I'm really trying to pick up speed because this starts downhill at not a great clip, but at least a pretty good clip here. And this is a little rougher. You'll see the road gets rougher. There's more ruts here. There's more loose stones, and some of the stones are larger. But I'm trying to pick a line close to the edge where I feel it's somewhat smooth. Now these are the area where I'm probably going about 22, 23, 24, 25. Occasionally I may hit 26 miles an hour. This bends again to the right, then back to the left. And still the same composition on the surface. You can see some well-worn areas there. I'm trying to stay on those flat areas without hitting any stones that may have been pushed onto the trail. This is probably around 26 miles an hour here coming down. You see the ocean in front of me. Again, too bad there's some clouds that are keeping it from looking really blue. It looks more faded because of the clouds. But that's the ocean. You'll see the reflections in the ocean there in front of me. And again, this is a pretty good pitch here. I've got to slow down because it bends to the left here, and I just can't take this at full speed because I'm going fairly fast. The trail is narrowing at this point in time. And then after this little left turn, it bends to the right and it becomes paved for just a very short time, and this is fairly steep. Again, you can see the reflection on the water out there of the clouds. Unfortunately, it's not deep blue, but you get the picture. And this is going pretty fast here. This is down to a very hard left, trying to miss everybody in the trails in front of me. I usually give them about 75 yards notice, and then this cuts very hard to the left, bringing me then down to another trail right toward the ocean. Continuing down, there are some humps in this trail for drainage diversion, and they get pretty steep. We're going to go over a couple here. You'll see my camera bounce a couple of different times. Try to slow down and hit that back brake before I go over these. So I'm not one that is trying to jump. Don't have that skill. Occasionally I do get airborne, but that's by mistake, not by plan. And then hard left here. You'll see the ocean in front of me there. Catalina is directly in front of us. And now this is going to make a hard left, kind of very hard right, back down toward the canyon, toward the ocean, back into civilization again. And thank goodness everybody stayed out of my way so far. That's the ocean right in front of you. And I'll make a hard right onto a little single track here. And this single track, I'm going to try to keep up as much speed as possible. Occasionally there are other bikers here or hikers, and this gets a little crowded, but so far so good. And keeping up the speed here, this is just about maybe another foot wider than my handlebars. I know with the wide angle GoPro it looks a little bit wider than that. And hard left here down over a couple little pitches and grooves, and manipulate these areas, and then pick up some more speed, head off slightly to the right, coming back toward the base of the canyon. And so I'm going as fast as I feel comfortable right now. I'm going to come down a little further and hit a left turn that takes me down a fairly rutted, steep pitch to the left, which in the beginning, the first couple times down, I just had to come to complete stops to try to make it down this section here. And now, having a little bit more time on top of the bike, this is fairly bumpy, fairly groovy, and you'll see it falls off quite quickly to the left here, so you don't want to go left. At least I don't want to go left. But very bumpy and down, fairly steep. Hitting front, back brake, mostly back. It comes down to an absolute 90 degree to the left turn across a narrow bridge. So after I've been able to manipulate that left turn, then the seat goes back up, again from my handlebars, gears up into high gear, still in about high gear on the front, about 7 on the back. This is the canyon trail that I went out to my right. Now I'm coming back here to the left, across the bridge that I came across at the beginning. I'm shifting down in all my gears to the lowest gear, and then I'm going to shift back up into about 5th gear. And then once I get to 5th gear, I'm going to stay there, high gear in the front, 5th gear in the back, and then this will take me back up to the steepest pitch to where I'm going to be able to begin my climb back to the parking lot. Now I'm coming up to the steepest pitch back to the parking lot on this part of the path, and now I'm climbing up over the steep pitch. And then this path will continue to go up about another 50, 60, 70 yards, and then bear to the left, and then we'll be almost back on the level. At this point, my heart rate's back up to about 156, 57. And I am really, really trying to get back to the parking lot and make this a 32-minute trip, which would be about 2.5 minutes faster than at any other time I've done this. And of course, I'm pushing. This is now on the level. I'm going to make a slight right. I've now adjusted the seat back down about 2 inches. I still have about half suspension right now, and I'm in high gear in the front. I'm now in 7th, 8th, and now 9th gear on the back. I'm really pumping this as hard as I can go, trying to get back. Heart is racing. I think I might be able to do it. Again, I don't have a timer that I can watch or a stopwatch. My iPhone is on my belt in a case, and I am just sensing that this could be my fastest trip, my quickest trip ever on this 5-mile course. I'm now no suspension, fully locked out. I've geared down 3 gears on the back, and I'm pumping up to the parking lot. You will see that my vehicle will be here just on the left past these trees, and I think I'm going to make it. I'm almost positive I can make it. I've turned right around and come back into my vehicle, and lo and behold, I think I did. So I hope you've enjoyed the ride from El Moro at Crystal Cove. I've certainly enjoyed it. Again, Dr. Jack Lynn, Time Defiance Fitness. Hope you might want to come out and take a ride with me sometime. I would surely enjoy it and be more than happy to have you as a partner in this wonderful ride in a wonderful space where we can really enjoy the outdoors and the fresh air. Have a great day.